Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. This is the third round, the start of the third round, and we get to see new compositions with General Skywalker included, and I think everyone in my group has General Skywalker to some degree, and one of them even has a Relic 5 General Skywalker, so stay tuned for that match. That'll be fun, but for right now, we're going to focus on my match with Hi 35. I don't really know how he pronounces it, but that's how I choose to think of it in my head, which means that I try not to think about it much because it's kind of driving me crazy even now. Anyways, looking at the stats, my opponent had more relics than me, at least more relic levels than me, which is probably why we got paired up. We actually had pretty even rosters, actually. Even our relics were relatively similar. I have a slight advantage in mods. He has one more Zeta than I do, and maybe just a little bit more gear on some of his lower end guys, but I definitely have the advantage in higher end gear. And just looking at our relative rankings and pairings, I've won a little bit more, but really not that much more. Like, this is going to be a very difficult match. And moving right into the match, you can see that my opponent did not place Darth Revan on defense in the front rows at least, which is always nice because that means that I can use my Darth Revan potentially on a weaker squad, but there are a bunch of kind of tricky squads. We have Carth with Watt, and we also have Jango bounty hunters, which are not that well geared, but they can definitely do some damage. I haven't seen First Order on defense for a really long time. And then there's a pretty strong, pretty fast Nightsisters squad, and it was going to be a good match.
Are you ready for a war?
The first thing I did was check the different speeds on the Nightsisters. Needed to make sure that I wasn't going to be faster. So you look at Asajj, she's at 227 speed. You have to add 105 to that. So she's at 332, and my Stark is 320 plus another 20 because of Veer's lead, which means he's at 340, which means we get to go first. Now, sometimes you can risk going first against Asajj, being faster. It's about 1 in 10 chance that you just lose right off the bat, though, because if Stark gets stunned by her basic, then you just can't do anything. But right away, something went wrong here, and Stark goes first. He adds turn meter to everyone, and in all my testing and in all of my really meticulous modding, Death Trooper has always gone second. I've set him so that he's just a fraction. He's like 1 point faster than Range Trooper, and so the fact that Range Trooper went before him really threw me off. Like, that is not what the plan is, so to speak. I really wanted to make sure that Death Trooper went first. He could throw his grenade, dispel the zombie, reduce everyone's cooldowns, or rather increase everyone's cooldowns, and then go for being able to take everyone out. Everyone can then just have a lot of turns and everything. That little blip that you just saw was just me putting it on airplane mode because I knew that there was a risk of me losing at this point, and so being able to... That little blip was just me turning on airplane mode on my phone because it looked like things were going to go south pretty quick, but I wanted to see if I could do a little extra damage to these Nightsisters before they ended up just losing and having to restart. I didn't want to feed turn meter, of course, so that's why I put it on there. Anyways, this was a really frustrating set of circumstances. Like, I've beat a lot stronger Nightsisters teams before this, and the fact that I lost, I wasn't really sure who was to blame. Like, I don't think that it was the game's fault. I need to look and redo my math. Right away, though, I wanted to check to see if my Death Trooper had just missed one of his mods or something, and he hadn't. He was the speed that I had intended him to have, so I really don't know what happened. Losing that first match was really frustrating, and it was not just because I was going to lose 20 banners, but it was because one of my squads was just kind of evaporated. It's one of my utility squads that I use every single territory war and Grand Arena match, which is more relevant to this video, but it's something that I use every time, and not being able to have it available just because of user error was really frustrating. So it essentially meant that I was not going to be able to clear as efficiently as I previously had wanted to, so I had to take in another squad to be able to kind of account for that, and I decided to bring in the Ewoks to be able to take out my opponent's first order team, because his first order team was relatively low geared, and Ewoks are absolutely able to do that. Beyond that, I needed to see what was in my opponent's other back zone, because I didn't know what I wanted to use to counter this Nightsisters squad. There were a bunch of options that I had, but I needed to see more things. I needed to have more information, and so I decided that I would take on the Jango squad with Jedi Training Rey, because I can absolutely win that match. It's not necessarily always efficient, but I can do it. And then First Order, I thought I'd take a risk using First Order to take on the Carth Old Republic team with Watt. So that's what I decided to do, and let's go see what happens. The Ewok versus First Order fight is something that is kind of well documented at this point. I feel like a lot of people realize that Ewoks can counter First Order, and so a lot of people don't put First Order down, or if they do, they put something like Zeta Barris in there to stop all of the different paper cuts from just completely destroying the team. But my opponent didn't do that. Like, they just had an old school First Order team, and First Order Stormtrooper didn't even have his Zeta. A lot of them were Gear 11, and this team really isn't that strong. Like, I wouldn't call it worthwhile in most circumstances. Like, it's okay, it's good. I would rather use it on offense, honestly. I mean, you guys see me use First Order every time to pretty good effect, and like, I almost never lose with First Order. You know, as long as you don't overreach, overextend with your First Order team, you can really do a lot of damage in Grand Arena. And so you can see that while I'm using Ewoks here, the first target is always going to be First Order Officer, and that's just because he's really easy to kill, and he's also one of the several motors that First Order have. Now, it's kind of an interesting thing that Ewoks would counter First Order so dramatically, and I think it's really just due because they don't have an easy way to dispel themselves other than First Order Officer, and if you put days on them, First Order are just as dependent as Ewoks on the turn meter train. So being able to just consistently take a lot of turn after turn after turn is really important, and First Order Officer is one of the people who is able to do that for them, so being able to take that away is really important. The other two turn meter train people in the squad are Kylo, old school Kylo with a helmeted Kylo. Then First Order Executioner is also someone who gives them a lot of turn meter. The entire squad is really fun to play, actually. If you guys haven't used First Order on offense much, I would highly recommend using them. As it stands, I was countering them on defense, and once they're dazed, they don't really do that much. Now, one bad thing about using Ewoks on offense is they have a really hard time regenerating their protection, and as you can see, some of my Ewoks are already like past the point of being able to get any of their protection up to 100%, and really what we're trying to do is make sure that I get at least 55 banners. I mean, we want to get more than that, absolutely. This isn't the best matchup, but on the other hand, I didn't think this was the time to try Phoenix as a counter. I know that Phoenix can counter First Order, but I've had no luck with that with my own Phoenix, and this was not really the time to experiment. And the guy who I normally test things on in Arena, it doesn't have a well-developed First Order team, and so hopefully he watches this video and feels a little bit called out and decides to do that. But until he does, I don't really have a good First Order team to test against. And So I'm just using my Ewoks here to be able to beat them instead of using Phoenix, who maybe would have been able to get a higher banner count. One thing that's potentially problematic against First Order with Ewoks is Kylo starts getting some really crazy defenses up. Every time you're hitting him, he's becoming more resilient, and every time you debuff him, he actually gains health. And so you really need to be careful about that. Like, he can really, really do a lot of damage, and once he gets enough build up, he can like kill one Ewok. You can just one-shot them, and then if you kill him right away because his defense is back to normal, then you don't get the banners for that. Like Ewok Elder is able to kind of cancel that out essentially, as long as he's not the one who got one-shotted. But anyways, that's a minor concern. I was able to take the win with losing 4 banners. I mean, that's a really frustrating thing, because normally I am able to win without losing any banners. Jedi Training Rey can just do it right away, but I didn't really have that option, unfortunately. The next match I wanted to try was First Order versus this Carth Old Republic team with Wat, and you can see right away that Wat applied the buff that gives Zalbar never-ending taunt. You can't dispel it, or rather you can, but then it comes back right away, and that he's really, really resilient. Like, he's resilient anyways, but then beyond that level of resilience, like, he is also, every time he takes a turn, he regenerates a bunch of protection, and as long as his protection is up, we can't dispel his taunt. And so, I mean, that's problematic, because really, I mean, Old Republic, the whole goal is to kind of get into that juicy inside and being able to take out the guys that are doing damage. Zalbar doesn't really matter. I mean, that's the classic tank problem, right? I mean, kill Zalbar and the rest of the squad kind of folds. But if you can't kill Zalbar, or if you can't get past his taunt, then you've got problems. So immediately I wanted to take out Wat, not only because he is relatively squishy, but because he synergizes really well with the Old Republic. Just because once you get all of your dots onto characters, Wat has a way to just, he uses an ability, and he makes all of the dots activate immediately. And so you can see I have a bunch of dots on First Order Stormtrooper here, but it's not enough to probably finish him off. However, if Wat were to go, he could activate all those dots and do damage, do like 30% health or whatever it is on First Order Stormtrooper, and then when First Order Stormtrooper went, those dots would activate again and probably kill him. So you want to take out Wat right away. Not to mention he's got all of his tech and everything. He was able to get all 3 techs out, so it wasn't like that was necessarily going to be a hugely problematic piece of the puzzle, just because it was already part of the puzzle. But you just want to take him out. He's just so good. I don't necessarily think that Wat belongs on defense with Old Republic. I definitely put him in other squads on defense. He's a really big game changer, but Old Republic, it's still a relatively strong option. Like, he's strong in basically any squad that has a taunting tank in it, because he can give them that taunt before anyone goes. And anyways, this is kind of just wrapping up. I'm really, really trying to get First Order Stormtroopers' health and protection up, and mission is just not resilient enough to be able to give me that time that I needed to be able to do that. I still was able to get 59 banners. I barely got his Stormtroopers' health up in time, and 59 is just fine, especially just because Wat is such a question mark. And that was actually the first time I'd ever tried that counter. I have watched some videos, and I know that it's actually a real counter, but it's not necessarily something that I felt confident going in on. Next up is Jedi Training Rey and her merry band against Jango and his extremely fast and annoying, obnoxious band. And the only way I felt okay about going into this matchup right away was that BB-8 is faster than Bosk once you do all the math with droids and percent speeds and everything. So once Bosk has his taunt up, this squad becomes extremely problematic, and so it's problematic for this squad regardless. You don't quite have enough tools to be able to silence all the different threats that are occurring, and so this Greedo version is actually pretty tough because he throws the thermal detonators, so does Dengar, and those thermals can really do a number on your squads. Like you saw that Resistance Trooper keeps taking hits. He almost died just to a couple random thermal detonators, and you can't stop this squad from being able to get hits in on you against Jedi Training Ray, at least not the way this squad is composed. It's actually pretty hard to get stuns off on a lot of these guys, just because the nature of Jango's leadership Zeta means that the more debuffs that are on the squad, the harder it is to be able to land them. I think it reduces each of your members' potency by like 20% or something like that. And the only way they're able to get any debuffs off is through R2-D2 being able to provide all that extra potency at the start. So all the numbers are crazy high to start with, and then they just keep getting ground down. And it's not necessarily an unreliable match. Like I have always won that match between Jedi Training Ray and Jango, even when the Jango squad is considerably better than this. But I have also really struggled to get full banners. So -5 banners there is not really a good result. That's not what we're looking for. In the back zone here, there's no Darth Revan, so that's mixed results, because that means I have to keep my Darth Revan in readiness just in case he's in the other back zone. But on the other hand, that Qi'ra squad is not necessarily a huge threat. The General Grievous squad is absolutely a threat, as always. So looking at my available teams and the potential matchups ahead, I knew that I needed to hold Darth Revan in readiness, and then I needed to be able to take out another meta team in the back. And that essentially meant that I would probably need to have Traya or CLS. Those two cover the majority of the teams that I might be able to see in the back there. Really, like, Commander Luke can take out everything that Traya can't, other than Darth Revan, and my Darth Revan would be able to beat my opponent's Darth Revan, at least in theory. So that meant that I would actually be able to use Padme here against the hurt Nightsisters, which kind of stinks because I would have just preferred to start with Padme against the Nightsisters and then used like troopers to be able to take out my opponent's bounty hunter team in the front, because they wouldn't have gotten a turn against my troopers. But that's just the way it is. My opponent's defense was actually pretty well constructed and well layered in terms of being able to force me to use which teams on what, and kind of tempt me to use stronger teams than I absolutely needed to. And it didn't necessarily work, but the fact that I kind of stumbled out the gate against their Nightsisters was good enough for them. I mean, that the match at this point was theirs to lose. I decided to go undersized squad with my Padme team against this Nightsisters. Not because it's a weak Nightsister squad and they already have turn meter, so it's going to be a tough match. But with my Relic 7 Jedi Anakin, combined with the fact that Mother Talzin is not here, and Mother Talzin's one of the ones who kind of stirs the pot a lot. Like, you really need her on a good Nightsister squad, whether she's in the lead slot or not. You need her. So the fact that she wasn't there really took a lot of pressure off, and I decided to take this as an opportunity to maybe make some banners up. But more than that, I would be able to get my feet advanced to be able to hopefully not rely on getting an undersized win on, in one of my final matches. And it's working just fine here. 38 banners. I mean, it would have been 58 if I had just jumped in there in the first place, but 38, that's okay. The fact that I beat that team, I guess we're happy. So the next zone was Geonosians and Imperial Troopers. Troopers are a really confusing choice there, but it really meant that I had a lot of really easy choices in the final matches. Like, I had 4 good teams remaining. I could just kind of min-max which teams I wanted to use. The only question I really had was whether I should use Jedi Revan or Darth Revan on the Grievous squad, and I decided that even though my opponent had a bunch of relict characters here, like they're all gear 13, I decided that I would use Jedi Revan anyways, because their General Grievous was not a super high relic level, and I had just, before this the lock went in, I was able to get Yoda up a few relic levels and Jolie up a couple relic levels as well. So I had additional resilience. Yoda had an extra like 1,000 offense after bumping his relic level up by like 2, which is insane. So he was hitting like a truck in this entire match. Otherwise, I don't really think, I think that once you get to about this point where, I have 3 guys at gear 13, I have Bastila at 12 plus 5, and Hermit Yoda is gear 12 plus, I don't know, 1 or something. He's not really that great. I should probably get him up a little bit, but droids are going to really struggle against this as a counter. Like, Jedi Knight Revan is probably going to end up being overkill once everyone has Relic 7 and everything. I think that the big, by far, advantage is going to be with Jedi Revan here. At any rate, you can see here that we're just waiting for me to get Jedi Revan's mark back, and that's exactly what happened. Once you kill B2, you need to be able to just jump on Grievous, kind of spread out the damage as much as you can, and thanks to my opponent's extremely resilient Magna Guard, I was able to do just that. Just being able to spread out the damage, not give General Grievous extra turns is big, and once Jedi Revan cycles through his different abilities and is able to get Mark once again, then it's all over. You mark Grievous and you just take him out, especially now that Yoda's doing a ridiculous amount of damage. It's pretty awesome. So you saw there I was trying to reduce turn meter on the Droidica with Hermit Yoda, or with Grandmaster Yoda, sorry. And it didn't really work, but then Bastila went and was able to just stun him right away anyways. And so that was fortunate, because he might have been able to crack through some of my protection at that point, depending on who he shot. But you can see the purple bars here. I have not really lost any protection this entire match. That being said, I decided that it was time, now that Magna Guard was the only one remaining, I decided it was time to make sure that everyone had their full protection, and I was just doing as many buffs as I could to everyone and trying to get everyone as many turns as I could. And this match was clearly over, but you still need to maximize banners. Like, even though I had dropped 4 banners on First Order, I had dropped 5 against the bounty hunters, I still wanted to make sure that I was maximizing my banner count as much as possible and giving myself every chance to be able to win. And so, getting 60 against this squad was actually a pretty big feather in my cap. I don't think I've gotten 60 against Grievous. Maybe I have in the past a little bit, but 60 is pretty good. Normally I'm happy with something like 58. So that matchup was probably the biggest question mark in my mind, just because if things go wrong, they go wrong fast. And, Grievous can absolutely survive and be able to just take out all of your Jedi if you aren't getting your crits, or if you just kind of mess up your turn order or something. Things can go wrong pretty quick against General Grievous. So I wanted to do that one first. Once that was up, I knew that I was going to be able to win all my remaining matches. I just needed to make sure I was maximizing all of them as best as possible. And this match is always a little bit problematic. Newt is so obnoxious on any team, especially on a Scoundrels team where he gets to go a lot of times, and he gets all these different bonuses from Qi'ra. He's really frustrating. In addition, Nest is relict, and she's going to be hitting pretty hard. So we want to contain Nest, we want to contain L3, and you'll note that now that L3 has Fracture up, I'm able to kind of hit the juicy inside. And the very first thing you want to do is take out Vander Chewbacca. I know that in every match that I talk about this match, Vander Chewbacca, I always say you want to take him out first, and it's just true. Like, he is almost always the first person you want to target. You want to contain the rest of them, control the rest of the guys, because the rest of them are doing really good, important things on this team as well. But Vander Chewbacca is the key. If you're able to take him out, then the rest of the squad can fall. If you don't take him out early, then you can kind of just like time out. You won't be able to beat him long term. So I was just waiting for Annihilate there. You can see now that I got Annihilate off on Nest, the rest of the match is going to go pretty easy. Vander's gone, Nest is gone. Now we just need to see how many banners we can get from this. All of my protection on a lot of my guys is pretty low, so I was kind of trying to figure out how I was going to be able to get like any protection on these guys. And the fact of the matter is Newt was really kind of messing with me and my ability to do that, because it seemed like every time I went and was able to grow back some of my protection, Newt was always there to just kind of take it back, take it away from me. And so I was able to finally finish him off. He is just such a really good character. I would really recommend developing Newt as a character. Even if he's not going to go with your Separatists, he goes really well with the Scoundrel team. He probably just goes well with like any team that needs a random 5th character. Highly recommended. And the fact of the matter is, Newt is also just really hard to take out. Like, you can take him out, he has a lot of hit points and protection after he gets up to like gear 13, but even if you do take him out relatively easily, he's got a revive on his first death, so then he stealths and then you can't take him out again for a while. So he's got a lot of resilience too, a lot of hidden resilience. So you can see I forwent Annihilate with Nihilus in favor of trying to get some extra protection, healing from Thrawn, and getting 58 banners there. It's not perfect, obviously. It's okay. I mean, I'm already dropping a lot of banners. I need my opponent to have kind of a bad day against me if I'm going to be able to win at this point. But the good news is the next 2 attacks are going to be almost guaranteed wins. And I'll probably be able to make a couple of banners back. So using CLS, I only took the 3 of them. C-3PO would be nice here, but he's not really necessary. And the goal is just to regain some banners. You want to take out Stark first, because he's the one who has the ability to make your life hard. Once you get the turn meter train started, then they can really start messing with you. I got a little bit unlucky there with Chewbacca. He's dazed, so he's not assisting here. I don't necessarily need his assists, except I want his assists because they also have the side effect of healing Han and Chewie and Commander Luke, and getting their protection back up. So once he's dazed, though, he's not going to do that, and then you don't get the special ability. So probably going to drop a banner or 2 here, but Troopers are a really easy team to counter in the Grand Arena on defense. I would really recommend using them on offense strictly. So 61 banners, I wanted 62, but stupid Chewbacca decided to get dazed, so we just have to work around that. And then finally, my favorite match ever is being able to use my Darth Revan on Geos. And Geos are, as everyone by now has probably experienced, Geos can be really problematic for being able to get easy wins. And, they'll always take banners, etc. Except if you have Darth Revan. Like, Darth Revan is the exception. You just, you take your squad and, you put all your debuffs on them, and it's not really close. Like, the bugs just don't get turns against Darth Revan. Like, Darth Revan is the heaviest of counters. So, I take it back. It looks like Malak got hit once, and then he wasn't able to get another turn because he killed the bugs so fast. But still, 60 banners against Geonosians. I suppose that's fine. I got a bunch of undersized wins this Grand Arena as well, which is nice. I think I'm at 9 out of 12, or I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but I'm on the final one, and I'm almost done with it already. So my final score, 1887, not that great. My opponent did eventually attack, though, and they didn't fail any attacks. Despite not failing any attacks, they still managed to get a lower score than I did, 1882. So that's good for the win on my end, which is hugely relieving. Even though they were able to one-shot every squad, they apparently really just kind of hemorrhaged some points. So you can see all of the different defenses. I'm adding notation at the top now so that you guys can see which zones I'm using these guys in, just in case it's not clear. So the first two I'm showing are the top and the bottom zones, and all these teams are designed to steal banners if possible, or make my opponent use a really tough team so that he doesn't have really good choices when he gets to the back zone. That's always going to be thrown off a little bit if my opponent did take Darth Revan for offense, which they did. They also had a General Skywalker at Gear 11 with 4 Zetas, so there's a lot going for them. But I did manage to get the win here. Really exciting, because that means I'm at 7-0. I only have 5 matches to go. Trying for 12-0, but I'll settle for being able to get into Kyber, of course. At any rate, I think it's time to wrap things up. I'll show you guys a screenshot in a minute of my next opponent, which is hugely scary and hopefully is going to go less poorly for me than I imagine it will. But until then, thank you all so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.